So it's been a real big third-party weekend after TFCon Online, and it continues this week with yet another reveal. And this one I'm really excited about because it's one of these segments that we're going to have today where there's a lot of stuff to talk about and a lot of lore to dive into in relation to this product. And it makes me excited because I like talking about this deep dive kind of history when it comes to Transformers and when third-party kind of leans into that. So the third-party company Toyworld revealed on Weibo, the Chinese message website, their TW-FS05 Sky Burst, which is a third-party take on a World War II Jetfire. And it transforms into what looks like more like a World War I battleship than a World War II battleship. I'll get into that in a moment. First thing I want to get into is the choice of a name, Skyburst. What I find interesting with that is that's a name that's kind of skirting right now because Hasbro had the Skyburst trademark for themselves. That was a trademark name that they owned in 2010. They put it on a Power Core Combiner toy. And then it was refreshed again in 2012, 2013 when they did that Power Core Combiner value packs when the Power Core Combiners weren't selling very well. And then they refreshed it again in 2016 when they did Victorion. And one of the members of Victorion, the fan vote Combiner female team, there was a character named Skyburst in it. And it was one of the helicopters. I always found it weird that Victorion had two helicopters. I mean, obviously, the other helicopter was Stormclash, and she had the visor, while Skyburst had the regular face. But otherwise, it was kind of the same mold. I mean, I would have expected a little more diversity among the molds. But anyhow, the point being is, after that, the name has sat in limbo for a while, and is actually up on the chopping block for expiration. Does this mean that the third-party companies know that Hasbro is not going to be renewing it and they're taking advantage of that fact? I don't know, but I find it very fascinating to see a Transformer named after a trademark that Hasbro, at least currently owns right now. So that's very fascinating. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the choice of alt mode here for this World War I and/or II Jetfire. So Jetfire has had, this is Movie Jetfire. Movie Jetfire has had tons of toys. Easily like more than 20 up to this point, as crazy as that sounds. And this has been a character that has a lot of history that we don't know about. Now, through the IDW comics, we kind of learned how, he had this very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very like Axelon kind of looking transwarp Cybertronian alt mode. First time we saw it was in the Defiance comic books from IDW. I think it was issue number 4 we saw that. And we learned how he got to Earth and crashed on there and being a Sunseeker and all that kind of stuff, or Star Seeker, excuse me, for the Sun Harvesters and everything. And through hook or crook, he ends up getting a boat mode. Now, here's where it gets kind of weird, because the boat mode that he turned into was the USS Maine, and that was like in the late 1800s. Like, to be specific, the USS Maine was like 1888, 89. And he loses that design because he gets sunk, and that falls into what happened with the USS Maine in real life, but that's a whole other story. And he kind of falls off the radar. And then he doesn't show up again in Transformers lore until World War II, and by then he has adopted the Lockheed P-38 Lightning alt mode, which, for people who aren't familiar with that, that's the movie highbrow toy. Very cool toy, very cool design. So what happened in between there? What happened during World War I, 1914 to 1918? And this actually tries to make sense of that. Because the last time we saw Jetfire was he was underwater, he went through a space bridge, and that was it. So one could assume that maybe when he came back, he kept that water alt mode and stuck with it, and we have what we have here today. Now, I'm not sure exactly which battleship it is. I'd like to believe, I know this sounds silly, and someone who's a battleship expert, please correct me, but I'd like to believe that it's a British battleship just because Mark Ryan, his voice actor, is British. That's what I'd like to believe. But it looks like it leans more towards that of an American battleship just by its shape, like the Alabama or something. I don't know. It's hard to tell. The fine details are kind of lost on me here. But what I can say is that this third-party release is pretty impressive. So this is meant to fit in with your Studio Series stuff. It's shaped and done in that scale. If you would have saw the robot mode standalone, you would have never guessed that it turns into a battleship or anything outside of his traditional Blackbird design. But he incredibly does both that. He has his walking stick. He has his axe that he uses to kick some serious ass. And he transforms into a gorgeous battleship that even has a stand, so you could have it in battleship mode and have it just displayed as if it was an actual battleship kind of model kit. Even has a little a little display, which I'm pretty sure they're going to paint in and put something in there. Maybe what the actual alt mode is exactly. What's really interesting about all of this too, more than anything else, is that it also combines with your Voyager scale Studio Series Optimus Prime Revenge of the Fallen. So that's a nice little wrinkle too, that even though we have all of this going on here, he still also combines with that Optimus. So that's a nice little extra for people. So, some people have been saying this is an original design or it's a far take, but if you actually dive into Jetfire's lore, there is a lot of stuff that suggests that this is kind of leaning in that direction. This is not official. Nothing about this is official. There's nothing that says Jetfire turned into this during World War I. But it kind of leans in that direction considering what the character's comic book history was. And I find it fascinating that they really decided to go that route. Either people at Toy World are hardcore fans and they really read all of IDW stuff and really kind of put all the, the puzzle pieces together, or maybe there's something that just suggests that the Chinese market want this kind of alt mode. Because, again, this is kind of aimed at the Chinese market and the people in the Chinese market that really love the movieverse. But this is awesome. This is really cool. This is the kind of stuff that I like to dive into because it's so interesting when I see creative stuff like this that is aimed at a very niche kind of part of the story that isn't like animation or movies. The comic book stuff has always been kind of a smaller audience, especially like the IDW movie comic books. That's a very small audience. And it's just interesting to see that they kind of were leaning into that. And again, the choice of name, which is, again, it's still kind of a Hasbro trademark right now. There's a lot. It's very fascinating. Let me know what you think about this. This is actually quite exciting. I really want to see this in full color. I love World War II and World War I kind of like designs and stuff like that. Always, again, it's some of the best designs that the movieverse ever gave us was that kind of stuff, that realistic kind of old school, mechanical stuff. I like it. Let me know what you think. This is really cool, really hot. Not much more I could say.